is Resolution 10423, a resolution authorizing the city to apply for the Meals and on Wheels Older Adult Alternatives of Fairfield County Incorporated 2023-2024 grants coming out of Public Works. Mr. Schoonover.
As a reminder, I gave you guys a heads up on this one last time because there's a deadline that we need to do. Generally, transit, all the stuff is lumped into one. We changed that up. So this particular grant has a deadline and we got to ask for suspension so we get it requested on time. Yeah. Suspension. And Mr. James is my second.
That's correct.
Suspension, and Mr. James is a second on 10423. No questions? I don't see any. That's pretty straightforward. The next item on our agenda is Resolution 10523, a resolution authorizing the Service Safety Director to dispense with competitive bidding and enter into a contract with Truck Country of Indiana Incorporated, doing business as Stoops Western Star of Ohio, according to the State of Ohio's Cooperative Purchasing Program, for the purchase of a cab, chassis, and plow hitch for the use by LDOT. This is coming out of Public Works also. Mr. Schoonover.
Yes, thank you. So, Tim, you can come up if you want, or I'll summarize real quick. Okay. Tim's coming up. This is not budgeted for this year because they didn't think it would be available for this year. I probably summarized it.
Good evening, council. Basically, what happened was last October, we were looking to replace a 2008 single axle dump truck, and went to our vendor who we usually go through and the state contract, and they said that if we ordered it then, it'd be about 700 days away, which would put it to September of 2024. And then late August this year, they called us and said, hey, your truck's going to be here this November. So we were going to put it in next year's budget, but we need to move it to this year's budget, and to do that, we need no appropriation. Pretty much that simple.
Question for Mr. Dietz? Seeing none. Mr. Schoonover, what's your pleasure?
3 readings. Yeah.
3 readings. Mr. Porter is the second.
Yes, please.
All right. The next item on our agenda, Resolution 10623, a resolution to repeal and replace permanent Resolution 9923, and to restate the services to be provided by the city to the annexed territory consisting of 8.9 plus or minus acres in Greenfield Township, and to declare an emergency. This is coming out of law. Mrs. Kreitz.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. There was a timing issue with the prior passing of the ordinance and filing by the developer with the county. The Law Director Hall, did you want to expand upon that?
Yeah, this is an annexation, so timing is obviously very critical. And both myself and the clerk had been going back and forth with the developer and the developers council on when we needed to pass our resolution and get everything done. There was a bit of a miscommunication because she was dealing with some people, I was dealing with some people. She thought because I put emergency language on it that it had to be suspended and passed. So I apologize, just a simple timing error on my part. And we just need to repeal and replace and then read it twice so that the petition gets filed in time for the resolution of services to be enacted appropriately. So I apologize again, but I appreciate your patience. Thank you.
Questions? Anyone? Okay. What's your pleasure on this?
2 readings, and Ms. Teener will be my second.
Okay, Mr. Schoonover, second. 2 readings on 10623.
Becky or myself?
I'm sorry?
You said Becky?
Yes, I was just told that.
Okay, so it says me on there.
Yeah,
but-
it's an
I
even
gotcha.
number, so
All
it's, yeah, it's your.
What was that? Oh.
The next item on the agenda is Resolution 10723, a resolution authorizing the law director to negotiate and enter into a contract with the city of Reynoldsburg for the prosecution of adult misdemeanor, traffic, and criminal offenses committed in the city of Reynoldsburg within Fairfield County, Ohio, and to accept payment. Again, coming out of law, Mrs. Kreitz.
Yes, this is an annual contract agreement between the Law Director and the city of Reynoldsburg for prosecution services in the Fairfield County Municipal Court. Law Director Hall, did you want to add anything additional?
Sure, just briefly, I'm sorry. My copy says it's Finance Committee.
I have it as finance too.
Yeah, okay, I just wanted to make sure.
I'm sorry, I wrote it down. It probably is, but
We typically run it through Finance Committee just because it is, a piece to allow us to negotiate a contract and receive payment for services that are rendered to the city of Reynoldsburg. But regardless, we prosecute approximately 60 to 70 cases for Reynoldsburg a year. There's a portion of Reynoldsburg that falls within Fairfield County, and therefore, all of their adult misdemeanor crimes that are in that part of the city have to come to the city of Lancaster. So there's not a whole lot there, but it is, the Walmart, that plaza, along with the Target across the street, the Chick-fil-A, all of that right there. We tend to get some, and there's some residential as well. So we tend to get some OVIs and some domestic violence cases out of it. The prosecution contract for last year was $10,080, so it works out to about $150 per case. And then there's also an additional stipulation that if we have to expend expert fees, we can ask the city of Reynoldsburg to pay us back for those as well. So that's fairly reasonable, considering what we are doing. Just asking to enter into a contract to do that again for the next year in 2024. Thank you.
any questions on that? We're going to have a couple more of these with other jurisdictions, I'm sure.
No, actually, I did a 2-year with
Okay.
Pickerington and a 2-year with the county. President Uhl, you're making a face like
That's what I was
something
thinking.
smells.
Yeah.
They were multi-contracts for the other ones.
Yes,
Yeah.
multi-year contracts
So
for
we
the
can
other ones.
see that.
Just Reynoldsburg was annual. Yep.
Sounds good. So correction on the committee is finance. I will sponsor, and Mrs. Kreitz, would you be the second on that?
Yes.
Thank you. We'll have 3 readings on that. Next item on our agenda is Resolution 108-23, a resolution to appropriate from the unencumbered balance and amend the certificate of appropriations with the county auditor in the general fund to cover the cost of electricity for the city. This is coming out of finance also. I'd ask SSD Martin to explain this request.
So a couple things here, not only the increase of electric, we actually had some, like a subdivision that typically when they come in and they add their streetlights, which is all approved, pre-approved by us that they would have so many streetlights. Once the contractor is done with the subdivision, then we actually officially bring that over. So when I see the streetlights come in, and we also had South Central did an audit this past year and found some lights that they were not charging us for. I'm proud of the fact that LDOT had those lights tracked, but we just didn't realize they weren't billing, so that was nice of them to find those lights, and so now we're increasing that cost. I share with people, I'm very hesitant to just drop any street light in. I've told you this before. They can be, if they're on a meter, which most of them are not, like Memorial Drive, Main Street, Edie Road, those are all on meters. But out in the neighborhoods, there's a set fee per light, depending on when it's installed, and it's an assessment to that light per month. And we pay anywhere from $250,000 to even more on the street lights for the city. Remember, the purpose of street lights is really to help with an intersection and safety, not necessarily for security and safety, but there is a lot of people that would have requested. But the main reason is really just the cost of electric has gone up. And one month that we had to pay for last year, we used this year's funding for. So that's the reason for the extra money that's needed for electric.
So the request is for $79,900, and Mr. Martin, do you anticipate that will carry us through the remainder of the year?
Yes, sir, I do believe that. We've gone over this multiple times and
Great.
we're comfortable with that.
Questions on this? Again, there was also a bill that was run over from last year that came into 2023 budget that was probably unanticipated.
And the
So-
Service Safety Director likes to remind the mayor that he cut the budget for electricity last year, so it's partially my fault too, yes.
I was not going to say that.
Mr. Ailes, I would ask you to second that,
Yes.
and I'm going to ask for suspension because we have bills to pay. The next item on our agenda is ordinance 2423, an ordinance for council, it's a pay ordinance for council president, council members, and council clerk for the term commencing payroll 1/2024. This is coming out of finance. This is a recommendation that we can only make prior to a new term starting. As all of us know, the terms are expiring and effective 2024. There'll be several new members of the council. I have made a recommendation that we raise council pay slightly. 2024, the salary would go from $10,000 to $10,500, and then an increase in 25 to $11,000. After some discussions, I looked at the clerk's salary, and it was adjusted the last term, and I felt it was, we would leave it untouched as it is currently at $12,000. So I would open it up for discussion about this piece of legislation.
Just to know, Mr. Chairman, it says 10 and 10.5 in the legislation. Is that not accurate?
I'm sorry, I might have misspoke.
Okay.
The legislation is correct.
10 and 10.5?
Yes, 10
Okay.
and 10.5. So I stand corrected on that, but yes, thank you. Discussion. Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to our next item on our agenda, and it is ordinance 2523, an ordinance to establish the compensation for the mayor for the term commencing payroll 1 of 2024. This is coming out of finance. Mrs. Kreitz.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This and the next two ordinances were all brought to our attention on the positions being significantly underpaid. And so after taking a look at the proposal by administration and discussions by council, we did come up with what we would recommend as compensation adjustments for the mayor, the auditor, and for the law director. The amounts are in the legislation, but the final amount after 4 years for the mayor would be at the $135,047, and for the auditor, $122,49, and for the law director, $141,11. And similar to the clerk and council, these must be established prior to the new term, and that's why they are coming before council now.
So we actually talk about all three of the pay ordinances, 25, 26, and 27. So at this time, discussion on those three ordinances. All right, Mrs. Kreitz, what's your pleasure?
3 readings each, and Mr. Ailes will be my second on all three.
On all three, Mr. Ailes will be the second.
Yes.
It'll be 3 readings on all 3 pieces of legislation. All right, this time, I would open this up for departmental updates. Are there any departmental updates? Mr. Gayfield?
Good evening, Chairman, members of council. Wanted to give you a couple of quick updates. First on pickleball, thanks to council's move to allow us to join the cooperative purchasing agreement, Aqualis. At the last meeting, we have received a proposal from Heiberger Paving that is within the budget. The base bid for it, or the base proposal, was $348,464. That's building the courts. And then the alternate, which is the steps and the walkway down to the courts, was $35,166 for a total of $383,630. So we are going to evaluate the proposal. We did ask for a couple of other proposals. We did not get any. I wanted to give an update tonight, so we made the deadline this afternoon. And we had one person call and said they couldn't make the deadline, so we're most likely going to evaluate it with the Service Safety Director's office tomorrow and move forward with the pickleball court. So thank you for your support, council. Without your support, we'd be looking at probably next year before we could bid it again. So they did tell us that potentially they might be able to get some work started this fall. I would be sensitive to how far they could actually get anything done, especially if it gets cold the paving, obviously, the asphalt plants will be closing here shortly. So if they get some work done, that'll be progress. We will be first in line for next year when the projects start up. So that is good news for the pickleball players who hopefully will be happy now with me. So, so the second update is actually on Bowers Park. Just to let you know what's going on out there, the Ohio operating engineers have started work with their fall class. They're out there doing dirt work currently. And this, in the same token, however, I talked with Park Board several months ago, and we decided we would go out and ask an engineer, and it's 2LMN was the firm that designed the park. We asked them to actually give us a price estimate for the work if we were to hire somebody to get the work done, so it was done faster. That was not done under the previous administration, so we had to go back and redo that. We did get those prices. If they were gonna start from ground one, which we're not at ground zero right now, the cost for just the dirt work itself, and that's just moving the dirt, was $598,141.92. If we say it's 75% done, and this number, I have to talk with the engineer, I'm not too sure it's very accurate, is $536,899. So, and 28 cents, if the 28 cents matters. So right now we're evaluating with Park Board, and as part of our budget process, what our next steps with Bowers Park is gonna be. Obviously at almost $600,000 just for dirt work. And then probably just a rough estimate of $50,000 per field for fencing, backstops, ball field dirt, grass seed, et cetera. We're probably up to a $750,000 to an $800,000 project. So it's a significant cost to go hire somebody to do the work. Ohio Operating Engineers has saved us some money. However, we are sensitive to the time frame and the public's interest in the project, so we are exploring other avenues as part of our budget process.
Questions for Mr. Gayfield? Mrs. Tiner?
Well, how about the the path across there for at Cedar Hill Road there for the
bridge.
Bridge, sorry, couldn't get that out
Martin's
there.
Bridge, I believe at the next council meeting, the engineer's office is gonna bring legislation. He has a cost estimate done. I did not bring it with me. And he is planning on presenting that as part of the request to get the bridge moving forward also.
So is that though coming out of the parks budget though? Is that a parks bridge?
It originally actually was a general fund purchase. I believe the legislation, at the recommendation of the mayor, was to come and ask for general fund money to pay for the bridge.
Other questions for Mr. Gayfield? I'm sorry. Paul?
So just to give a little history about that, our treasurer is not here tonight, but he approached me a few weeks ago and he, so I tried to touch base with him when he's in the office. And he said, hey, this bridge ought to be done, Paul. Why don't we do something like what we did at Olivedale, share the cost, pay for the bridge. We didn't really talk about percentage. And so I said, I remember that. We helped Olivedale with a HVAC issue. This is quite a few years ago. And so I said, hey, Tom, that's a great idea. I went to the mayor. I actually went to chairman of our finance committee, Don McDaniel, and we thought it would be a good idea for us to offer to pay for this bridge, because whatever we can put into this bridge is more money to put in other things with parks. And so I informed Steve Gayfield that, hey, would you take this if council were to pass that? Now, this is your decision whether you keep it there. We would ask that you would. And so that was where I started that. It was my conversation with Tom. I just want you to be clear if that's what happened. And what superintendent wouldn't take that offer, that gift that happens here. But of course, we would ask for your approval if that's something that you would do. We're bringing that resolution in next week.
Mr. James, did you have a question?
No, okay, no.
So, Mr.
Well,
President,
you kind of put it out there. What is the cost estimate? Someone's got to know the number, right? Ish.
It's approximately $250,000. If you give me a second, I can look it up.
I mean, that's close. If it's just in
Right.
general, looking for an idea.
That includes, I believe, a 20%, don't hold me to that. There's a contingency and there's also construction inspection involved in that. I think the actual construction of the bridge itself was around 180 to 190, and the rest of it is contingency and construction inspection. We are also taking the opportunity, I'm not sure if council knows this, so I'll mention it. We are also taking the opportunity to widen the bridge. So when we widen the bridge, we also have to replace the abutments. We were going to have to replace the abutments anyway because we don't know how they were built back in 1985. And we're not sure, they weren't sure that they would hold up under the stress of the new bridge and meet the new standards of the new bridges.
From an expectation standpoint, are you suggesting it's going to be somehow split, or is it going to be 100% request to the general?
I'm requesting that it comes and is funded through the capital improvement project.
Okay.
And of course, we would need your approval. I will say that Jeff Beard, our assistant city engineer, that's his expertise. He designed this bridge with the abutments, came to us and talked about trying to make it wider, as others have been promoting, to just make it a little bit wider than Paul Martin, so others can pass by me, but just to let you know. But yes, that would be a first. Trying to get a smile there, President.
Mayor Scheffler.
I'd also add that the bridge that is now defunct predated the bike trail. It was built in 1985, and it is used by a significant number of city residents who aren't necessarily using the parks. And I have gotten messages and statements from various West Side neighbors who are not big parks users or bike trail users, but use that bridge to get back and forth across town and across the creek because there's no easy way to get there. So that in my mind justifies it being paid for out of the capital improvements fund.
I will add that I believe we discussed this at the last council meeting, and that was explained that we request capital improvement money for this. And I think the mayor just summed up what I was going to say. Having spent about 20 years of my life at Martins Park and watched the activity on that bridge for all those 20 years, there is a lot of traffic that's using that to get from one part of the city to the other. There's certainly a lot of softball traffic at certain times of the year, but there's traffic there all year long, whether it's bike path traffic or pedestrian traffic, just moving throughout the city. And I think it certainly would be something that would fit into the category of a capital improvement. So that's where I'm coming from on that. Mr. James?
Could I ask one quick question? How wide are you going to make it? Because I've caught my handlebars on my bike several times trying to get across that.
Yep.
I believe it's going to 6 feet.
6 feet?
Yeah.
That's perfect.
Anyone else?
You could get two of Paul Martins on that.
Oh, you could just lay down and roll all the way across it.
Anyone else?
Oh, I do have a question,
Tanner.
actually. Olivedale. So they're charging when they have their events, like their dances and that. How much money are they actually putting back into the parks? Because that is a parks building, and they're making money in there, you know, having events. So how does that work?
I would have to go back and find out exactly for you. I'm not going to, off the top of my head, I can't tell you that right now. So I can find out, and I will.
I think council needs a report on that building being used and how much they're making as how much they're putting into the parks from that building.
Okay.
Okay? Thank you.
Anyone else have questions for Mr. Gayfield? Thank you. Are there any other departmental updates? Any other departmental updates? Seeing none, I'll turn this over to President Wolf for tonight's meeting prep.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We do have one resolution left, 109-23, to authorize the city to approve the Violet Township New Community Authority and declare an emergency coming through economic development. But I believe that the law director is going to speak to this. Ms. Hall.
Yes, sir. Thank you. So a new community authority is a economic development tool that is essentially a public-private partnership in order to get utilities and public infrastructure into an area that's going to be developed for, it can be a variety of reasons, commercial, educational, residential, et cetera. We're seeing them locally a lot for residential areas, and so There is one about to be established in Violet Township. It's the Violet Township New Community Authority, and that's for the Sycamore Grove development of Rockford Homes. Essentially, this has absolutely no impact on the city of Lancaster, but the Ohio Revised Code requires that the proximate city, which is the most populous city in the county, sign off on the new community authority petition, because the thought behind that is if we were big enough and closer to where that location is, we could provide those services. Obviously, Lancaster's growing, but not at the rate that we would be annexing anything in Violet Township in the near future, or even any of our lifetimes. So it's just a formality, essentially. There is no other reason that we have to sign off on it other than the Ohio Revised Code requires that. So that's what we're asking you to do with this piece of legislation. If anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to try and answer them.
Just a quick question. Then you're committing the city of Pickerington to provide all the utilities then basically with that new development, are they not?
No, it's Violet Township.
Okay.
So they can actually, some of it will be Fairfield County utilities. Some of it will be Violet Township in terms of fire and police protection. It's actually Pickerington that covers Violet Township in
Right.
terms of police protection. But then for like sewer, they're not actually going to hook up to sewer. It looks like they're going to have some separate system. So it's a combination of things, but they've already negotiated all of that with the developer between the two of them. So we're just asked to sign off on it, essentially.
Okay.
All right, any other questions for Ms. Hall? All right, seeing none, Mr. Ailes, this is coming through your committee.
First of two readings.
Thank you, Mr. Ailes. First two readings then on this, and your second will be Mr. McDaniel.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. Other than that, the only other thing I'll mention is IVP has asked me to remind everyone that the little buttons on your microphones now are very sensitive. And so as you move it around, you can push it on and off, and just make sure everyone's is on when you're speaking. If you wanted to have a side conversation, the mics pick up really directionally only, and so if you were over to the side, it's likely not going to pick up the conversation. However, again, if you do turn it off, be sure that your little green light is on as you begin to speak. Other than that, I have nothing. Oh, wait, hold on, maybe. Oh, all I know is what it says. Oh, yeah, Jack's gone. Mr. Matlin is not here, and so I'm going to need a second for all the perfunctory motions at the beginning of the meeting. Mr. Ailes, would you do that?
Sure.
All right. Anytime
Just
he makes,
cue me.
yeah, whenever he
Cue me.
makes a motion, you just second it, and we'll be
I'm gonna
good.
look at you and you gotta say second.
All right, we got it. That's all I've got, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Are there any other items for finance? Any other items for finance? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.
It's 6:28. The regular meeting of Lancaster City Council will begin at 6:35.
The Frankie Smith Funeral Home and Crematory in Lancaster and the Johnson Smith Funeral Home in Baltimore have a long and wonderful history of serving our community. Feel free to give us a call at 740-653-0652. Stop in and see us at either of our two locations, 405 North Columbus Street in Lancaster and 207 South Main Street in Baltimore. Respect for tradition, regard for change.
Hi, this is Kristen Glazier with Fairhope Hospice and Palliative Care. We're here to promote compassionate end-of-life care by providing comfort, support, and resources for those experiencing palliative needs in our community. This month, we are grateful to be chosen as a recipient of the Buckeye Cares program. That means Buckeye will make a generous donation with every vehicle they sell this month. We really couldn't accomplish what we do without local support. Thank you, Buckeye, for helping our community.
Good evening. Welcome to Lancaster City Council. Please join me in a word of prayer. Father, we thank you for this day and your blessings. We thank you for the opportunity once again to go about the work of the city. May you lead, guide, and direct us forward tonight, we pray. In Jesus' name, amen. I hereby call this meeting of Lancaster City Council to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please call the roll.
Mr. Ayers. Here. Mr. Ailes.
Here.
Mrs. Kreitz. Here. Mr. James.
Here.
Mr. Matlin. Mr. McDaniel.
Here.
Mr. Porter.
Here.
Mr. Schoonover.
Here.
And Mrs. Teener.
Here.
Let the record reflect that 8 of 9 members of council are in attendance this evening. Need a motion to excuse Mr. Matlin.
I'll make that motion that we excuse Mr. Matlin.
Is there a second?
I will second that motion.
A second by Larry. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Mr. Matlin is excused. Reading and disposing of the journal.
I'd like to present the regular meeting minutes dated September 25th, 2023.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to receive and file the journal.
Second that motion.
We have a motion and a second to receive and file the journal. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Other reports of city officials.
There are email dated September 26, 2023 regarding the REA and local government collection submitted by Auditor Tricia Nettles. Series of emails regarding meeting to review clerk interests submitted by Mr. Porter. Series of emails regarding meeting to review clerk interests submitted by Mr. Ehlers. Series of emails regarding congratulations submitted by Auditor Tricia Nettles. Email dated October 3rd, 2023 regarding congratulations submitted by Mayor David Scheffler. Email dated October 4th, 2023 regarding meeting to review clerk interests submitted by Mrs. Teener. Email dated October 5th, 2023 regarding October 9th meeting submitted by Mr. Matlin. Series of emails regarding Monday submitted by Mr. Porter. And finally, an email dated October 8th, 2023 regarding the finance agenda submitted by Mr. McDaniel.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to receive and file the reports of city officials.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to receive and file reports of city officials. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Are there communications?
There are. Letter dated September 25th, 2023 regarding Sells Green submitted by Jonathan McVeigh, Vice President of Development, Woda Cooper Companies. Letter dated September 26, 2023 regarding Emerald Place submitted by Zach Linsky, Developer Manager, LDG Development. Email dated October 6, 2023 regarding clerk submitted by Emily Cordell. And finally, a notice to the legislative authority of a liquor license transfer from Lancaster Bistro LLC, doing business as the Downtown Bistro, Excel Coffee Shops, located at 123 North Broad Street, first floor basement and patio, Lancaster, Ohio, to Trombos LLC, located at 123 North Broad Street, first floor basement and patio, Lancaster, Ohio, submitted by the Ohio Division of Liquor Control on Tussing Road.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to receive and file the communications.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to receive and file communications. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Mayor Scheffler, are you ready to do a presentation tonight for the auditor, or are we pushing that to next month? Oh, we haven't received it yet, okay.
Yeah, in emails back and forth, yes, so we're gonna get that tomorrow, he's gonna deliver it. He apologizes, that he can't deliver it in person, he had a prior obligation tonight. And the next council meeting is his 30th wedding anniversary, and he said he probably wouldn't live to see the next day if he had the council meeting instead of taking his wife out to dinner for the 30th wedding.
Understood. Very good. So the auditor, as many of you know, has received an award, and this council meeting was set aside for that presentation to take place, but we just don't have it yet. And so it can happen at the next meeting. We also have the United Way, I believe, presenting at the next meeting as well in October. And so there'll be a couple of things that will happen during that meeting. All right, are there petitions or memorials?
There are none to be presented.
During this time, we set time aside to allow the voters and taxpayers of the city of Lancaster to address us on any item or issue they would like. Is there anyone who would like to address Lancaster City Council this evening? Well, seeing none, we thank each of you for being here tonight. Are there reports of standing committees?
There are two water pollution control meeting minutes dated September 13th, 2023, submitted by Mr. James, and the Finance Committee meeting minutes dated October 9th, 2023, submitted by Mr. McDaniel.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to receive and file the reports of standing committees.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to receive and file reports of standing committees. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We're coming to that special time of year. Are all minutes caught up right now? You have them all?
No.
Okay, so if you're missing minutes and you haven't submitted them yet, please do so here soon. We only have a few meetings left to get them in and approved. Okay, maybe the clerk can reach out to you if you're missing and you don't know it.
Yeah, missing 3.
Missing 3, okay. All right, are there reports of special committees?
There are none to be presented.
We have no public hearings this evening, so we'll move to the reading of resolutions, beginning with the third reading of temporary resolution 92-23.
A resolution to schedule Lancaster City Council meetings and Finance Committee meetings for 2024, offered by Mrs. Kreitz and seconded by Mrs. Teener.
Mrs. Kreitz.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to make a motion that council suspend its rules and waive the, wrong thing. Mr. President, I would like to make a motion that council pass, engross, and enter upon the written record resolution temporarily numbered 9223.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to pass, engross, and enter upon the written record temporary resolution 92-23. Discussion, Mrs. Kreitz?
Yes, thank you. This is to schedule next year's council meetings and to allow the clerk to go ahead and reserve the room for those dates.
Very good. Further discussion on the motion to pass. Please call the roll.
Mr. Ehlers?
Yes.
Mr. Ailes?
Yes.
Mrs. Kreitz?
Yes.
Mr. James?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Porter?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
And Mrs. Teener.
Yes.
I think your button got pushed. Maybe you're not on.
No, I'm on.
There you go. It was holding it. Yeah. All right. Temporary resolution 92-23 passes 8-0. We're going to have second reading on temporary resolution 98-23.
A resolution authorizing the Service Safety Director to advertise for bids and enter into a contract for the Talmadge Avenue Replacement Project for the Lancaster Municipal Gas Department, offered by Mr. Porter and seconded by Mr. Mallon.
Mr. Porter.
Second of 3 readings.
Second reading then on temporary resolution 98-23. We now have first reading on a series of resolutions, beginning with temporary resolution 104-23.
A resolution authorizing the City of Lancaster to apply for the Meals on Wheels Older Adult Alternatives of Fairfield County, Inc., 2023 through 2024 grant, offered by Mr. Schoonover and seconded by Mr. James.
Mr. Schoonover.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion that council suspend its rules and waive the second and third reading of temporary resolution 104-23.
I will second that motion.
We have a motion and a second to suspend the rules and waive the second and third reading of temporary resolution 104-23. Discussion, Mr. Schoonover?
We're asking for suspension. There's a timing deadline for the grant, and it's applying for a grant to get some money for transit.
Thank you very much. Further discussion on the motion to suspend. Please call the roll.
Mr. Ehlers?
Yes.
Mr. Ailes?
Yes.
Mrs. Kreitz?
Yes.
Mr. James?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Porter?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
And Mrs. Teener.
Yes.
The motion to suspend carries 8-0. Mr. Schoonover.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion that council pass, engross, and enter upon the written record temporary resolution 104-23.
I will second that motion.
Oh, yeah, you got a second too. You got it in there. Good. We have a motion and a second to pass, engross, and enter upon the written record temporary resolution 104-23. Further discussion, Mr. Schoonover?
No thanks.
Discussion on the motion to pass. Please call the roll.
Mr. Ehlers?
Yes.
Mr. Ailes?
Yes.
Mrs. Kreitz?
Yes.
Mr. James?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Porter?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
And Mrs. Teener.
Yes.
Temporary resolution 104-23 passes 8-0. Temporary resolution 105-23.
A resolution authorizing the Service Safety Director to dispense with competitive bidding and enter into a contract with Truck Country of Indiana, Inc., doing business as Stoops Western Star of Ohio, according to the State of Ohio's Cooperative Purchasing Program, for the purchase of a cab, chassis, and plow hitch for use by the Lancaster Department of Transportation, offered by Mr. Schoonover and seconded by Mr. Porter.
Mr. Schoonover?
Be the first of 3 readings, please.
First of 3 readings on temporary resolution 105-23. Temporary resolution 106-23.
A resolution to repeal and replace permanent resolution 99-23 passed by City Council on September 25th, 2023, and to restate the service to be provided by the municipal corporation to annex territory of Metro Development for the expedited Type 2 annexation of parcel number 0140100400, consisting of 8.9 plus minus acres in Greenfield Township, and to declare an emergency. offered by Mrs. Kreitz and seconded by Mrs. Teener.
Mrs. Kreitz.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of two readings.
First of two readings on temporary resolution 106-23, temporary resolution 107-23.
A resolution authorizing the law director to negotiate and enter into a contract with the city of Reynoldsburg for the prosecution of adult misdemeanor traffic and criminal offenses committed in the city of Reynoldsburg within Fairfield County, Ohio, and to accept payment. Offered by Mr. McDaniel and seconded by Mrs. Kreitz.
Mr. McDaniel.
First of three readings.
First of three readings on temporary resolution 107-23, temporary resolution 108-23.
A resolution to appropriate from the unencumbered balance and to amend the certificate of appropriations with the county auditor and the general fund 1001 to cover rising cost of electric for the city of Lancaster. Offered by Mr. McDaniel and seconded by Mr. Ailes.
Mr. McDaniel.
Yes, Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion that council suspend its rules and waive the second and third reading of resolution temporarily numbered 10823.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to suspend the rules and waive the second and third reading of temporary resolution 108-23. Discussion, Mr. McDaniel?
I'll save it.
Discussion on the motion to suspend? Please call the roll.
Mr. Ehlers?
Yes.
Mr. Ailes?
Yes.
Mrs. Kreitz?
Yes.
Mr. James?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Porter?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
And Mrs. Teener?
Yes.
Motion to suspend carries 8-0. Mr. McDaniel.
Yes, Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion that council pass, engross, and enter upon the written record resolution temporarily numbered 10823.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to pass, engross, and enter upon the written record temporary resolution 108-23. Discussion, Mr. McDaniel.
Yes, Mr. President, this is, we need to pay for additional electricity costs that were not anticipated. In addition to the increased costs, we also added 38 streetlights in a subdivision. This is a request for $79,900, and it will take us through the end of the year.
Thank you very much. Further discussion on the motion to pass. Please call the roll.
Mr. Ehlers?
Yes.
Mr. Ailes?
Yes.
Mrs. Kreitz?
Yes.
Mr. James?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Porter?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
And Mrs. Teener?
Yes.
Temporary resolution 108-23 passes 8-0. Temporary resolution 109-23.
A resolution to authorize the city of Lancaster to approve the Violent Township New Community Authority and to declare an emergency, offered by Mr. Ailes and seconded by Mr. McDaniel.
Mr. Ailes.
First of two readings.
First of two readings on temporary resolution 109-23. Are there any further resolutions to come before Lancaster City Council this evening? If not, we'll move to the reading of ordinances, beginning with the second reading of temporary ordinance 20-23.
An ordinance to repeal and replace Lancaster Codified Ordinance Part 9, Streets, Utilities, and Public Services Code, Title 5, Other Public Services, Chapter 937, Waste Removal of the Codified Ordinances of the City of Lancaster, and to declare an emergency, offered by Mr. Porter and seconded by Mr. Mountain.
Mr. Porter.
Second of three readings.
Second of three readings on temporary ordinance 20-23, temporary ordinance 21-23.
An ordinance to accept the final plat for the Timbertop subdivision, Phase 3, offered by Mr. Ehlers, seconded by Mr. Porter.
Mr. Ehlers.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to make a motion that council suspend its rules and waive the third reading of temporary ordinance 2123.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to suspend the rules and waive the third reading of temporary ordinance 21-23. Discussion, Mr. Ehlers.
This piece is just to approve the final plats of the Timbertop project, one being a patio home, the other's, I believe, a senior assisted living facility. I don't, as of now, I don't believe the third one has any plans yet.
Very good. Further discussion on the motion to suspend? Please call the roll.
Mr. Ehlers?
Yes.
Mr. Ailes?
Yes.
Mrs. Kreitz?
Yes.
Mr. James?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Porter?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
And Mrs. Teener?
Yes.
Motion to suspend carries 8-0. Mr. Ehlers.
Mr. President, I would like to make a motion that council pass, engross, and enter upon the written record temporary ordinance 21-23.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to pass, engross, and enter upon the written record temporary ordinance 21-23. Discussion, Mr. Ehlers.
Nothing further.
Discussion on the motion to pass. Please call the roll.
Mr. Ehlers?
Yes.
Mr. Ailes?
Yes.
Mrs. Kreitz?
Yes.
Mr. James?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Porter?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Mrs. Teener?
Yes.
Temporary ordinance 21-23 passes 8-0. Temporary ordinance 22-23.
An ordinance providing for the issuance and sale of notes in the maximum principal amount of $500 $40,000 in anticipation of the issuance of bonds for the purpose of paying the cost of the renovation of an existing building for use by the city's municipal court, together with all necessary appurtenances thereto, and declaring an emergency. Offered by Mr. McDaniel and seconded by Mr. Ailes.
Mr. McDaniel.
This is the second of three readings.
Second of three readings on temporary ordinance 22-23, temporary ordinance 23-23.
An ordinance to repeal and replace permanent ordinance 17-23 passed on August 14th, 2023, authorizing a joint economic development district contract between the city of Lancaster and Violet Township and to declare an emergency. Offered by Mr. Ailes and seconded by Mr. McDaniel.
Mr. Ailes.
So second of three readings, please.
Second of three readings on temporary ordinance 23-23, with a note there is a public hearing set for the November 13th meeting at 6:30. We now have first reading on a series of resolutions, beginning with temporary ordinance 24-23.
An ordinance to establish the compensation for council president, council members, and the council clerk for the term commencing payroll 1 of 2024. Offered by Mr. McDaniel and seconded by Mr. Ailes.
Mr. McDaniel.
This is the first of three readings.
First of three readings on temporary ordinance 24-23, temporary ordinance 25-23.
An ordinance to establish the compensation for the mayor for the term commencing payroll 1 of 2024. Offered by Mrs. Kreitz and seconded by Mr. Ailes.
Mrs. Kreitz.
Yes, first of three readings.
First of three readings on temporary ordinance 25-23, temporary ordinance 26-23.
An ordinance to establish the compensation for the auditor for the term commencing payroll 1 of 2024. Offered by Mrs. Kreitz and seconded by Mr. Ailes.
Mrs. Kreitz.
Yes, first of three readings.
First of three readings on temporary ordinance 26-23, temporary ordinance 27-23.
An ordinance to provide a full-time law director and to establish the compensation for the law director for the term commencing payroll 1 of 2024. Offered by Mrs. Kreitz and seconded by Mr. Ailes.
Mrs. Kreitz.
Yes, first of three readings.
First of three readings on temporary ordinance 27-23. Are there any further ordinances to come before Lancaster City Council this evening? If not, we have no tabled legislation to act on. Is there any unfinished business? Mr. Porter.
Yes, President Newell, we, at the last, I think it was 2 meetings ago, requested letters of interest in the clerk position due to Clerk Sandy retiring. The one letter of interest that was submitted has been withdrawn, so we have instructed Clerk Sandy to post the position through HR and also put it out for notice to see if we can have any more interest or any other candidates.
Great. Thank you for the update. I thought you were going to say we've informed the clerk that she can't retire.
I already did that, but it didn't work.
It didn't work. All right. Well, valiant effort then. Thank you very much. All right. Thanks for that update. Other unfinished business? Is there any new business? Yes, Mrs. Grace.
I just wanted to bring to, I'm not sure who is aware, but to say congratulations to our own very Mayor David Scheffler, our mayor. He's been named to the Ohio Veterans Hall of Fame for this year, and it's such a great honor. Just wanted to recognize him for that.
Cool. That's great. Yeah, I did not know that. Congratulations. Thank you. Very good. There will be some sort of ceremony, or is that already happening?
Oh, yeah.
The induction is November 9th at 10 a.m. at the Fawcett Center at Ohio State.
Very good. Well, congratulations. All right. Thank you for letting us know that. Excellent. All right. Any other new business tonight? All right. Seeing none, we'll move on and ask the clerk to read our announcement of scheduled meetings.
Upcoming meetings for council, October 23rd. The meeting following is November 13th, both meetings here in council chambers at 6:30 p.m. The clerk replacement committee meeting scheduled for October 28th at 9 a.m. has been canceled. Water pollution, October the 11th at 8:30 a.m. at the 1897 conference room. Public Works, October 13th at 7:30 a.m. at the 1897 conference room. Economic Development, October 19th at 7:30 a.m. It will either take place in the Zane Conference Room or the Port Authority Conference Room. It will be determined that day. On October 19th at 7:30 a.m. IT Telecom, October 20th at 8 a.m. at the 1897 Conference Room. Finance, October 23rd at 6 p.m. Here in Council Chambers. Law Committee, November 1st, 11:30 a.m. at the 1897 Conference Room. Service, November 3rd at 7:30 a.m. at the 1897 Conference Room. And Water Pollution, November 8th at 8:30 a.m. at the 1897 Conference Room.
Thank you very much. Are there any bills?
There are no bills to be paid.
Knowing of no need for an executive session, a motion to adjourn is in order.
Mr. President, I'd like to make that motion that we adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn the meeting. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you all very much. Please remember to sign your legislation and enjoy the Fairfield County Fair. Have a great week.
Good job, Larry.
Larry, you were on it.